Paul Harvey always loved words, simple words, words we could all understand, and using carefully chosen words, he made our language sing. Paul Harvey also loved pauses, for he knew that the best way to drive home a conclusion after a metaphor-filled, captivating sentence, often racing ahead and dragging with it our imaginations, was to stop now and then. And after we caught up with him, he would tie up the loose ends, put a ribbon on an often gloriously constructed explanation or story or guarded warning, and he would make us smile and understand. In many ways, Paul Harvey violated every rule of journalistic writing. The New York Times might have begun a story this way. 88-year-old retired prospector John Rawding was found strangled to death outside his tent in Death Valley today. But for Paul Harvey, it would more than likely be, Americans, even the scorpions loved him. But it was this one-of-a-kind ironic turn of phrase and carefully chosen words that made us love Paul Harvey and listen to him and hang on his every word and pause. He came from the heartland. He stayed there both geographically and philosophically. His homespun choice of stories and interests were as loved by listeners in downtown Manhattan as they were in Manhattan, Kansas. There was a kind of smiling warmth in his voice, an infectious energy. You could listen to Paul Harvey on one of the darkest days of the year and be assured that tomorrow would come, that faith in a creator and in the flag and in continuing constant common sense of average Americans, would bring us another good day. During his career, he was not afraid to speak with candor to the mighty as well as to the many. He even once chided an old and trusted friend, Billy Graham, for becoming too close to the White House. He gave Graham a dressing down during one of his Saturday commentaries, reminding the evangelist of his association with Nixon, especially after the release of the profanity-laden Oval Office tapes. For God's sakes, Billy, he said, stay out of politics. To provide us with our daily dose of Paul Harvey, he kept a tough schedule. He scanned dozens of local newspapers and news wires way before each Chicago dawn to present more than just the news 6 days a week. Paul Harvey brought us a rich, ever-changing stew of American culture, served up in the style of a friendly uncle inviting us to dinner so he could regale us with stories he hoped we had not heard and fresh new ideas. And through it all, he doled out the strong message that we must stay focused on tomorrow. And then there were the tributes and the quirky stories. Take a pair of perfect roses to 107 John Street in Washington, Indiana. Harry and Margaret Lentz are celebrating 75 years together today. Don't ask Officer Jack Larson of Carbondale, Illinois, about that safety lecture he gave yesterday morning, especially after he was caught on a train trestle with trains coming both ways just 3 hours later. High school honors student Mary Crawford always wanted to learn to drive. Yesterday was her final lesson in Nyack, New York. But black ice and inexperience make for cruel instructors. Mary is forever 17. Our For What It's Worth department tells us that Jerry Dale of Zanesville, Ohio is angry. He is really angry. Someone put sugar in his gas tank. To make matters worse, he tried to clean it out. When it got dark, he lit... Don't get ahead of me. Yes, Jerry lit a match. He's okay. They haven't found it yet. In the 1960s, complete with the sound of the howling wind in the background, Paul Harvey described the takeoff of Santa's sleigh. His 5-minute, seemingly ad-lib description of the frenetic activities at Santa's village became memorable radio. Down the steel net runway, excellent snow landing conditions are possible. Santa down through the maritime provinces, rooftop landings possible anywhere, and they're off! They're off! Santa, who is headed your way, had something to say. Did you get it? I got it. Merry Christmas to all, and to all good night from the North Pole. We now return you to your regularly scheduled program. For many years each spring, he recited a poem about yearly reawakening. It was called Woses, written by political cartoonist Herb Block. It tells the story of a young girl learning to speak just as the flowers begin to bloom. Paul Harvey would recite it, complete with pauses every spring, ending this way. She doesn't care much for hippity-hops or hide-and-go-seek or candy shops, but hand her a bunch of celery tops. It's roses. Lilies are roses. Carnations, too. All are the same in her floral view. She fancies every violet blue is roses. Now I keep wondering what a wonderful world this world would be if the grown-up eyes of you and me saw only the things that children see. Just roses. Now that he's gone, radio doesn't seem the same. The millions of English-speaking people around the world who relied on his early morning broadcast more than an early morning cup of coffee now have to rely on something else, something forever inferior. Our Saturdays are not the same. There is an emptiness there, a yearning for those slices of American life and the soft and tender tributes to spring, or teachers, or dads, or policemen, or salesmen, or just to the American spirit. He's not around to dredge up those little-known facts, those pieces of information that are the rest of the story. Over the years, he heaped loving praise on his wife and partner. He called her Angel, and on his talented concert pianist, writer, and occasional fill-in son, Small Paul. He later dropped that nickname when Paul became much taller than he. And in a very special way, he let us know that he loved us just about as much as he loved them. We even missed the commercials. For years he extolled the virtues of Bankers Life and Casualty Company and Service Master, Amway, and 100 others. Sponsors lined up at ABC's door to be on Paul Harvey's newscasts. When the Kerr Company, makers of supplies for people who store fruits and vegetables, hired him to pitch its wares, he told us, "Use Kerr jars and lids every time you can." Some of his spots were sheer poetry. Once, while seeking to improve the image of an electric company, he said, "The next time you see high-voltage lines braced against a streaked and stormy sky, remember that they are bringing electricity from some distant point to some other place where it turns off the darkness." His words, coming from our radio speakers, called us home, welcomed us back in, no matter where we were listening, even on some distant shore. Paul Harvey's Christmas-time broadcasts were sheer magic. In recent years, he choked back tears to tell of a little boy and girl cashing in pennies at a Walmart, trying to find the money to buy their mom a pair of golden house slippers. We find out that their mom had recently died. Their dad had told them the streets of heaven were paved with gold. They wanted to buy the shoes so their mom's outfit would be perfect in heaven. In earlier decades, Paul Harvey told the story of a lost flock of birds seeking shelter in a howling snowstorm. I'd like to end by recounting that story, much of it in Paul's words. It was the story of a common man, one of us, the story of a hard-working family man who just didn't believe all those things the churches preached at Christmas time about God becoming man. The man's family went to the midnight service, he stayed home, and suddenly he heard a thudding sound. Then another, and then another. He went to the door and discovered a flock of birds huddled miserably in the snow. They must have tried to fly through my large landscape picture window, he thought. He took pity on the birds, finally opening the door to his barn, turning on the light, trying to coax them into the safe, well-lighted stable. But everything he did frightened and scattered the birds. If only I could be a bird myself, he thought. If only I could be a bird and speak their language and tell them not to be afraid, but I would have to be a bird myself. I'd have to be a bird. At that moment, the bells of the church began pealing out the glad tidings of Christmas, Adeste Fidelis, and he sank to his knees in the snow. Paul Harvey. Sleep well, Paul. Good day.